Good afternoon and welcome to our Confidentially Speaking webinar for June. And we're brought to you from a very chilly Melbourne afternoon. We are hoping to warm up the cockles of your heart over lunch by bringing a live negotiation to you based on the topic of the moment. I call it the hot topic, as to how do we convince our teams to come back into the office after enjoying working from home so much. And this is something that really affects me for this scenario specifically, in that just imagine this. I'm not going to say Sicily 1920, as Sophia would have been in the Golden Girls. Have I just aged myself? Anyway, I just have. There's been some nodding happening there. So basically, imagine this. I am the CEO of LSPTY Limited. We used to have 100 employees in the company, but no thanks to COVID, we needed to downsize, and we now only have 50 employees in the company. This means that we have smaller workspaces, we have hot desking, and so we don't expect our employees to come in every single day to work, but we have a dual work from home work in the office policy where we expect our employees to come in at least 2 to 3 times a week. And most of our lovely employees have embraced this situation. But as usual, there are outliers. And of course, this Confidentially Speaking team of Janet, Jane, and Mary have been really reluctant to get with the program. In fact, at best, we've managed to get them into the office 1 or 2 days a month. And they are a team, and I can't even get them into the office on the same 1 or 2 days of the month that they attend. So I have had it. I'm frustrated. I see the other employees are getting frustrated by their reluctance to kind of semi-return to work more full-time-ish. And so I sent them a memo yesterday, and I said, we can't continue with the status quo, that my expectation is that, like other employees, they attend the offices 2 to 3 days a week, at least 2 days a week, and that we would have a discussion by teams, because of course they're not coming into the office for the conversation, that we'd have this discussion on tomorrow. That would be Thursday. This morning early, I got an email from Janet saying to me that she really is a bit worried, that she doesn't think she's going to be able to make the 2 to 3 days a week that I've asked for, and she wants to have a meeting with me to discuss. So what do? Of course, I can't pretend that I'm not happy to have a meeting and stop having a meeting. So I've got to have a meeting with her. That would be about now. And my thought process around what's going to happen in the meeting is, I know that Janet is going to battle to come into the office 2 to 3 days a week. I mean, she's been coming 1 or 2 days a month. And I also know that she's a great worker, that I enjoy her company when she's at work. I think she does a great job. And I don't want to make this a position where she leaves the company. So I'm going to use certain tactics to try and entice her to come into the company, to the office, because it's a great place to be in the office. In this regard, I know she loves cupcakes, so one of my techniques is going to get cupcakes into the office whenever she's there. But that's something she'll discover when she starts coming back in. I have also thought that my positioning might be this time to let her come slowly back into the office. That means that she wouldn't have to come back in 2 to 3 days a week immediately. I might agree that she can come in 1 day a week. I'm not going to tell her that, of course, but that's what we're on about. So that's my position. I'm almost ready to meet Janet, but I thought you might want to meet Janet without me present, and she can let you know what she's thinking about the meeting. So before we welcome into the room, I'm going to give you an exclusive peek into what Janet is thinking.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. When I first got the memo from Elise yesterday, I was quite taken aback. I love my job working with Elise, but part of why I love it is because I can work from home. So I thought to myself, well, how do I prepare for this meeting? And the first consideration was, well, can they do this? Can they force me back into the office? So I dug out my employment contract and had a good look at it. But of course, it was signed pre-COVID, so it's completely silent on the issue. So that didn't help me one way or the other. So then I thought, well, what does every employer want? They want profitability. The bottom line is they want to make money. So I thought, well, why is working from home better from a financial point of view for Elise? And so I thought about all the arguments I could come up with as to why I was more productive working from home rather than in the office. And then I thought, well, I really need to challenge Elise's arguments. Why is it that it's so important that I'm in the office? What is it that I can't do working from home that I must be present for? So at this meeting, as well as I can, I'm going to try and, really challenge Elise as to why it's necessary. And then finally, I thought long and hard about how important this job is to me and how much I enjoy it. And therefore, what am I prepared to do to compromise and try and work through a solution? I'm quite anxious about the meeting. Part of my preparation is to have made notes for myself so that I don't forget any of the issues I want to raise with Elise. But yes, let's see how it goes. I've got my fingers crossed. So I'm ready now to go back in and meet Elise.
Hi, Janet. Welcome to our meeting. And I really appreciate you letting me know you wanted to speak to me before we meet the team tomorrow morning. How are you doing today?
I'm okay. I'm feeling okay. I'm a little bit nervous about the meeting, but we work well together, so I'm sure it will be all right.
That's good. And tell me, did you have a good weekend? Did you see any good movies?
I did. Lovely movie. Radical.
So well worth seeing, right?
Yes. Highly recommend.
Good. So look, I want to make this as pleasant as possible. Obviously, we do work well together and we need to talk to each other openly and honestly. And I guess you've got the memo, literally got the memo about coming into the office. And, as I explained, I'm feeling very frustrated that I have a team of 3 people out of an employee group of 50, and the 3 of you are just the only ones who are not coming into the office 2 to 3 days a week. And I feel that this is impacting our ability to work as a team, and it's also impacting, the goodwill of the other employees towards your team. So we do need to find a way of ensuring you guys come into the office like everybody else does. But, I've set everything out in the memo. How about you start about your concerns as you've called this meeting?
Well, thanks, Elise, and thanks for the opportunity to meet with you one-on-one. I did reach out to Jane and Mary, but couldn't get hold of them late yesterday. And I honestly believe that Jane is probably not on the same wavelength as me anyway. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to you privately about this.
Sure.
Look, I want to start out by saying I enjoy working for the company, and I certainly don't want this to spoil that wonderful relationship that we have. But looking at it from my perspective, I am concerned about the impact that this is going to have on me. You will remember that when I first started working for you, I was living quite close to the office and I could even walk to work. But now I've moved since COVID and I'm living a long way away from the office, and I'm finding it's taking me an hour and a half on public transport and just over an hour if I drive, plus parking. And that has an impact on me financially. The cost is becoming more and more prohibitive, but also it's more tiring for me. I find that at the end of that first long day, or any long day that I'm in the office, I'm quite tired. If I was coming into the office 2 to 3 days a week, I'd be tired at the end of the first day, therefore tired at the start of the second, and, getting pretty exhausted by the end of the second day. So I'm concerned about the impact that that's having on my performance, or would have if I had to be in the office. And the office environment's probably not good for me anyway in terms of my health with the air conditioning. I don't like it.
Okay.
I just think I'm far more productive working from home. I live alone, as you know, so there are no distractions. I'm totally focused on my job. On the contrary, when I'm in the office, I'm constantly distracted. People are coming up to me. They want to talk to me about the best movie I've seen lately or whatever it might be. And even if it's just for me to turn around and say, look, I'm really sorry, I'll speak to you later, it takes me away from my train of thought, particularly if I'm doing something complex. So that's distracting. And it's also, there's a lot of employees that play music in the office, and I find that a bit annoying as well. And I've thought about noise cancelling headphones. I'd have to buy some, but what's the point of coming into the office if I'm going to sit there with headphones on? It's, it's a bit antisocial, and I might as well be at home. The other thing I've thought about too is that the workspaces are very cramped. You know that I need 3 screens to work and do my job properly. And with the downsizing over COVID, I find these new workspaces very cramped, and I can only just fit all that I need in the space. And with the hot desking arrangement and some desks not even being big enough for 3 screens, I'm concerned about what will happen there as well.
Okay, Janet, that's great. I just want to unpack some of it because you mentioned 3 or 4 issues, and I'm scared I'm going to forget everything that you've mentioned, and we're not going to talk about that. So let's take what I've heard from you so far is it takes you a long time to get into the office, that you get distracted in the office, that you don't like the music, and that you are scared for your health because of the air conditioning conditions, and then also that you get tired because of the long ride in. So let's unpack each of those separately and look at your discussion about the length of time coming into the office. Now, we can always ensure that you don't have to come into the office one day after the other. It could be Monday or Friday so that there's a break of time and you'll have had a rest over the weekend, and then before Monday, and then you're working from home on Tuesday, and then on the Friday, of course, you've got the weekend to recover. Looking at the other issue about air conditioning, we are in a pretty schmeck office these days. I know we've downsized, but it's schmeck. They test the air conditioners. We don't want people getting sick either, so we get the health people coming in to check that everything's working, so that shouldn't be a problem. I do get that you worry about the, that people playing music. I also don't particularly like that. But if you put on your headphones, you're really saying to people, I'm busy drafting or working, and you are cancelling them out for that part of the time. But then once you take them off, you can communicate with them. And I'll get on to why that's important, because one of the reasons, as I said in the memo, that worries me the most is that by everybody working from home, we lose the support of the team. And there's a lot of brilliant stuff that happens when teams are sitting in the same room and working together. The second thing about it is that you are, I really think you're a great employee. You do such great work, and you actually are a role model for our young employees. But if you're not in the office, they can't see you working and they can't learn from you. So even, playing music, if you said, well, I find that distracting, how about you don't play the music? That would be huge coming from you. I can't put a ban on music in the workplace, as you know, as long as it's not heavy metal that destroys everything. So these are important things. Plus, the issue with Jane and Mary and you need to be able to speak to each other, and working separately, although you'll pick up a phone if there's something specific you need to talk, you're not going to pick up what's happening around the office if you're sitting from home. So those are my strong feelings as to why we need to overcome these issues that you have.
I do find that my communication with Jane and Mary during the course of a day is quite frequent. We have the chat option, and we all type very fast. So it's almost as if we're talking. We're keeping each other up to date as to what we're doing. And if we do need to chat, we just pick up the phone. So, I feel that I can maintain a good working relationship with them, even separately and from home. I guess what I'm saying from all of this is that I just think I'm a more productive employee when I'm working from home. But I understand your position. I appreciate it, and I'm willing to try and compromise. I'm just wondering if there's some way we could sit down together and look at what the projects are that are coming up and the business strategies, and looking at what days you really do need me in the office, so that we can see really how often it's absolutely necessary. And maybe I can just ease into it, perhaps, I don't know, 1 day a week for the first 4 to 6 weeks, and see how we go, see how that works, and then maybe have another discussion. We can sit down again and see how it worked with me coming in a little bit more often. Does that sound like something that we could work on, do you think?
That sounds like an interesting opportunity, and I appreciate that you're open to moving towards that. How does this work? Because we also have to make sure that at least one of the days, and you're talking about 1 day a week, that Jane and Mary also come into the office, because one of the issues I have is that you're not talking to each other properly. Now, what I mean by that is, yes, Teams is very effective for communicating, but sometimes you're sitting and you overhear someone talking that you're not going to hear on Teams. You might hear someone who's, Jane coming up with an idea when she's talking to a client that she's not going to share with you, because it's not something that is specific that she wants, that she feels that you need to know about. So I really do need you in the office at the same time. How do you think you could organize that with them?
Well, I would be happy to speak to them. I can give them a call after this meeting today and chat to them and see if we can't work out what that 1 day a week will be that we come in together all together. Yeah, I'd be happy to speak to them.
Oh, okay. At this stage, I think we'll just keep. I'll keep the communications with Jane and Mary. So thank you for the offer, but I'll deal with that. What I really let's get back to that. So when you're talking about strategies and the days, are you saying to me that if I can show over the next 2 months that you should be in the office because there's a real reason for you to be there 2 to 3 days a week, you consider that as well?
Look, 3 days a week would be a real stretch for me. I have to be honest with you and with myself. I want to keep performing well and to the standard that I have been. To my mind, it's worked exceptionally well over the last 3 years that I've been working from home. And yes, I'm willing to come in more often, but I would like to ease back into it, and I'd really like to understand, I'd like to see it working better. So if we look at the strategy over the next couple of weeks, and there are some key meetings or times when you think I need to be there, then let's do that. I'll commit to coming in for that. I mean, I'd like to say 1 day a week, definitely, each week for the next 4 weeks, say. And then who knows, at the end of that 4 weeks, I may even say, well, gee, this is working really well and I understand better. I guess I'm just trying to be honest with myself and ease back into being in the office more often. Does that make sense to you?
Well, yeah, thinking about it now, although it's not ideal, I do appreciate that you want to see how it goes. And so given your work performance, and I really want to stress it's your work performance, and, I'd be doing something special for you, because obviously every other employee will have to come in are coming in 2 to 3 days a week. So we'll have to work through that. But I given your work performance and that we value you as an employee, I'm satisfied to agree that we'll do 1 day a week, a day to be determined after our meeting with Mary and Jane tomorrow, and then we'll have a meeting after and see how it's going, and we'll keep our And hopefully by then you'll start seeing that it's actually quite fun to be in the office and what you've been missing out by only coming in for 1 or 2 days a week.
I appreciate that. I really do. I appreciate the fact that you're not making me come in that 3 days every week. And like you say, who knows, in 4 weeks, you might get sick of me. I'll be causing too much disruption in the office.
Oh, I would hope. So are you going to be putting on that heavy metal?
No. You don't get that from me. No.
Great. Okay, so let's give it a whirl. I might want to speak to you tomorrow before our discussion with Jane and Mary, but otherwise, let's agree that it's a one day a week starting from next week, and we'll agree a day. Just do you have a specific day in mind that would suit you so I can start considering that?
Look, I'm prepared to be flexible there. My ideal day would be Wednesday, but if you want me to be in on any other day for that 1 day a week, I'm happy to do that. I don't have any fixed other commitments because I'm working full time for you. So any day is okay.
Perfect. That's great. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Janet, for your time.
No, thank you, Elise. And is this going to be a Teams meeting then tomorrow?
It's definitely going to be
Not in the office.
Not in the office. I mean, if you couldn't get hold of Janet and of Jane and Mary to come to speak to them at a moment's notice, I guess Teams is the easiest way to begin with. But hopefully, we'll be having more meetings in the office. And so now, Janet, as you know, we have some people we need to speak to. They're behind the door, and we've agreed that we will actually tell them secretly what we've been up to in this negotiation. So I'm going to invite our webinar audience to participate in what we're going to call our debrief now that the negotiation is over. And as with most negotiations, we would end with explaining what we've agreed. At this stage, Janet will be coming into the office 1 day a week. She's flexible as for the next 4 weeks. She's flexible as to the day. I have told her she's not to discuss this with Jane and Mary, and that we will see after 4 weeks how things go. Okay, so Janet, let's get out of slight character, not complete character, but slight character.
Although you'll find I'm pretty much like this anyway.
She's a hard cookie to negotiate with, although, it's good that she's agreed to 1 day a week. If anyone wants to ask us a question, if you thought you could do things better, please go into the chat and let us know. But I'll start off with Janet and say, how do you think you went? What did you think you did well in that negotiation?
Well, I got what I wanted. I mean, I'm prepared. I didn't tell you this, but I'm prepared to go in 2 days a week, and would have done from next week. So I feel quite happy that I only had to come in the 1 day a week, which is why I started at 1. And I thought, well, if she pushes back and makes it 2 days a week, then I'm prepared to go that far because I love the job. I want to stay working there. I kind of thought I got a bit, I don't know, a bit whiny, a bit beggy. Maybe I could have been a bit stronger, but I don't know. I'm interested in the webinar participants, how they thought it went.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
But I'm happy overall.
Yeah, you got what you wanted. Did you think your preparation made a big difference, or do you think you could have winged that chat with me? Because, it's your work. We're not talking figures. We're not talking overall complex strategies.
I'm a great proponent of fail to prepare to fail. And I think, if it's a 1 hour meeting and you spend 10 hours of preparation, it's not 10 hours wasted. I think too many negotiations are just done, by the seat of people's pants. And I really think that the more preparation you put into any negotiation, the better.
That's great. And let's go. So you think you did well, and you say negatively about yourself that you think that you might have been whiny. Was the whiny part because of the fact that you were negotiating with me? Am I taking that personally?
Yeah, and look, to be honest, I'm sort of more in support of your position of getting people back into the office. So I struggled a little bit, and I thought that you could be a really tough employer if you wanted to be.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because in a sense, as the employer, I hold the cards in that I don't have, I mean, there are laws that say I have to be reasonable, but if I need you back in the office, I can make that a basis. So we've got a question coming in from, oh, great. This is a great question from Peter. Can you each step us through the tactics you used? So I'll let Janet start, and then I'll go for my tactics. Janet, you start. What tactics did you use thinking about this
Well, I sort
negotiation?
of alluded to this in the preparation. Any employer is always looking at the financial side of anything. So I was wanting to convince Elise that I'm more productive. Don't have me in the office being distracted. Let me work much harder, more efficiently, and more productively at home. So I always appeal to the financial side of things. And the second thing is, as always in most negotiations, you start out offering less than what you're prepared to give. So as you just heard me say to Elise, I was prepared to work 2 days a week, but I started with 1 day a week, and lucky me, she accepted that. Mind you, it's only for 4 weeks, so we'll see how we go at the end of that. But I actually like being in the office, so I'll probably come in 2 days a week.
She'll, she'll over deliver, and then I'll say come in 3 days because that's my idea. I'm going to make it so fun. Yeah, that's good. So
I guess bottom line, your opening offer is never your best offer.
yeah, although I accepted it. Oh, maybe I didn't do so well,
We
Peter.
need to hear what you have to say about how you went, Elise. How do you think you went?
Okay, so firstly, with the tactics, I'll step you through my tactics and how I think I went. So my tactics were really, I knew that I could force her into the Janet into the office, but I was worried about her mental health. You know, when people, you don't see them that often, you don't really know how they're doing. There could be a very good reason she's not coming into the office. There might be personal issues as well. So that was one of the issues, is I needed to open up and be friendly about it, and try and make it fun without being too didactic, because as I think I wanted my tactic to be is it's fun to be in the office. You're going to love it. So if I make this too much of a, you need to be here, people are not finding it horrible that you're not in the office, I don't care what you say, that kind of aggressive look wouldn't have worked with Janet, I don't think, and it also wouldn't have been that part of my tactic. Come in and make sure she loves being in the office. So that was the tactic that I used. My other was just making sure that I had a very firm idea of where I was prepared to go. But Peter, I'm going to point out that I actually made a big mistake in my preparation, which then affected the tactic. And that happened in that I was so busy thinking, I got this email from Janet this morning. I was so busy thinking about how I deal with Janet, who I think is a great employee, that I forgot about the impact of what my decision would be on both Mary and Jane, and even further on the other employees. So I came up in my head, which I thought was a good tactic for Janet, come into the office 1 day a week, which she offered for up front. And I'm not one that worked with what I wanted. So one of my negotiation tactics, if it works for me, give her a win, she feels good. I was happy to go there. There's no reason for me to force the issue further. But what I didn't think is, goodness, that would mean Jane and Mary might want to come into the office 1 day a week, and I don't actually think they're as good as Janet. I wouldn't be prepared to give them as much. Now, this is a scenario, so don't take it this way. I think of Jane and Mary, but so I didn't think of the bigger picture. I didn't think about the impact this would have on that team, and I didn't think to myself, where is this going? Where is this going? What happens if Janet gets her 1 day in the office for 4 days, and let's say that works for us? Am I prepared to work on the basis of having a different scenario for different employees? And that, for me, is one of the biggest issues of the tactical approach to negotiation, not only preparing for that specific scenario, but thinking much broadly about what the effect of the negotiation will be on the broader business, on the broader outcome, not just for today, not just for the next 4 weeks, but really the big outcome for the organization, whether that's the next 3 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years. I've got to have a bigger strategic plan and tactic, and I admit to failure here. So that's what I think. Janet, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I probably, if you hadn't asked me specifically not to call Jane and Mary, the first thing I would have done probably this evening is call them both and say, hey, listen, we can probably just work it that we only have to come in 1 day a week. Now, you might do a separate negotiation with Jane and Mary and have all sorts of different discussions about reasons for them to be in more often. So, yeah, I think you specifically saying don't call them was great, because now I won't do that, because I'm a loyal employee and I'm going to go behind your back, but otherwise I would have.
Yeah, it was funny, wasn't it? That I only picked that up when you started saying you were about to call Jane and Mary. I thought, oh my goodness, I've let this go out of control, haven't I? That I hadn't thought about the two of them. So yes, you're right. Here's a message from Tom. What does the law say I can or can't do as an employer? So the law, depending on where you work, what the nature of your employment is. So, for example, the EBAs, enterprise bargaining agreements, there's certain awards that apply. So there might be something in the awards or the EBAs that deal with these perspectives. So you've got to make sure that you check those first. And of course, there's the employment contract, which would if you're an employer, you should have these things dealt with in your employment contract, which clearly, according to Janet, I never did. So both of us were left at sea. So it's important to think strategically, think long term, and make sure that there's a policy in place that about working. Nowadays, to be honest, we never used to have to think about this previously. I mean, it was never, you went to the office unless you had a special arrangement, right? And of course, working from home really relates to corporates more than any other professions, because in many professions you actually have to be, if you're a nurse, doctor, if you're working for McDonald's, you need to be there. There's a lot of professions and employment opportunities that don't allow you to work from home. So it is important where that opportunity exists for the employer to be very clear about the policies that they have in place and to include that in and negotiate that in the agreement. Now, of course, the problem you have is for employees that were working for you during the COVID period, because then we have the legacy issues of the contract. So, what did you allow, and now you want to change things? That becomes a little bit more complex and you need to negotiate those. So, Janet, do you want to add something in?
No, I agree with all of that. And, as I said in my prep, that was my first port of call. Well, can they make me come back into the office? But as you say, it was all negotiated pre-COVID. No one was even thinking about working from home full-time at that stage.
Yeah, and in fact, Liz has just asked, what if you started working during COVID with the understanding that work will be from home? How do you manage an expectation to come into the office in a post-COVID world? Good question, Liz. And that, I think I'm going to take the employee position here, because you get used to working in a certain way, and especially people who have worked really well during the COVID period, or people, when you have caring duties, whether it's for children, elderly parents, I'm going to add in pets, whether you've got used to a way of life where you work well from home, but it also gives you the ability to care better for your family. It's really difficult then when we say, well, now you've got to come into the office all the time. And I guess that's where the kind of preparation that Janet started working with, in saying, I've got to show why it's important for me to work from home. So two things is, why is it so important? And air conditioning, Janet isn't going to do it.
No, no. But I thought my arguments around the cramped spaces and the distractions were a little bit stronger.
Yeah, no, I think, I like the distractions and the sound of that, but I think, if you could say, look, I have to pick the kids up at 3 o'clock every afternoon, or at least one week on, I have to go and look after make breakfast for my elderly mother or something like that, and then 1.5 hours into the office, I'm going to waste time in the day. That might tear at the heartstrings more. But Liz, if you want to give us any specific examples of what you would suggest, or what you would like us to suggest, it's easier for us to customize. But I'd suggest looking at what it is, firstly, from a heartstring point of view, where you need to be there. So it's something that's personal to you. But also, as Janet said, how you're going to make it up for the employer so that they feel that they listen to as well. That, for example, my points about, I need my team in the office, I need you to speak to each other. There's a lot that happens around the office that we cannot replicate on Teams or Zoom. That
There's
would
a
be
good
what.
comment. Sorry, Elise, to interrupt you, but there's a good comment here from Barry
Yeah.
Berger.
Yes.
He's saying it appears that this interaction could be used for a more holistic discussion with all staff to determine what the business may require for the future. I think that's a really good comment, and I think it could be used for a more holistic discussion. Good comment, Barry.
That's excellent comment. As from Barry, that's brilliant. And we've got a question coming from Brad. And in the meantime, what if nobody gives any ground? Great question, Brad. That does happen sometimes. The question then is what we would do then, and of course we're doing a very quick negotiation here, is we would first start asking questions. So if someone's not giving ground, it is important for you to try and take control of the negotiation. And someone like folding their arms and saying, I'm going nowhere, means in a way that's their walk away position. Right. So the first thing I need to do is ask them question, why aren't they giving ground? What is it about my persuasion that is stopping them? So query. Let's hear what they have to say. Why is this so important? I call it the collection of facts. Just collect information, collect the facts. You don't have to respond to it. Just find out a lot about where they're coming from. There might be something there that makes sense and you can understand it, sometimes not. And then take time out. Take time out to think about it, because at the end of the day, if we've got to that point where we're at, I'm not going to use the loggerheads, but where we can't move past each other's position and we aren't going to give any grounds, there's no point just sitting there. So one of the options is to say, look, I'm going to go away and consider everything you've said after having collected more facts from them, and then go away and think about it. But it could well be in this case where you say, look, it doesn't work for me, it doesn't work for you, we can't continue working together. And that's okay. It's okay in most cases to say, well, this is important to me and I'm not going to go further. Oh, Barry's here. He's saying definitely by being curiously inquisitive, you move away from a positional stance and the other party feels listened to. Barry, we need you in the room here.
That's great, but ultimately some people just won't be persuaded by those more humanistic type things, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then it becomes, I think, very much more technical, where you are sort of put to your proof in a way to show, well, working from home, you're not performing all the aspects of your employment that is required of your role. And then it's for the employee then to say, well, show me how I'm not performing all the aspects of my role. And if it gets, too difficult, because then I would think that you need an independent third party to perhaps mediate. If it gets to that point where you're at complete loggerheads, someone has to give. What's going to happen?
I love.
You dismiss them, then you might be up for an unfair dismissal case, and you want to avoid that. I think if you get to the absolute loggerheads position, then mediation is a definite option.
Don't we love Janet for pushing our mediation arm of the Confidentially Speaking product? Yes.
Not really. It's just a natural progression, really.
No, but it is true. It's true that, like, if within your negotiation, and especially if it is a dispute related as opposed to transactional, could result in a dispute, then the role of the mediator becomes really important. And for those of you who don't know what a mediator is, and there are a lot of differing views, the basic view is a mediator is an independent party who doesn't have any skin in the game, who should be an expert on mediation techniques and on negotiation. And the idea is that person is brought into an intractable negotiation to try and help the parties work out a resolution. But the mediator doesn't resolve it for you. They assist you to resolve it themselves. Speak to us more about it. There's a lot more about mediation, but I love mediation. Sometimes when you see it work in real life, I've seen log jams that have really made a huge difference. So that's great.
A skilled mediator will really be able to make the party see things from the other person's perspective, because it's coming with a different voice. The parties involved can argue forever, putting their position, but because it's coming from the other side, you don't see it as objectively, whereas you bring a third party into the mix who expresses it in a different way and challenges them. It done well, it will bring two warring parties to some sort of compromise resolution.
Brilliant. Now, I'm just prompting anyone. We're going to give you another 2 minutes or so to ask us questions. And let's see if there's any burning issue you've had on any negotiation, please ask us and we'll try and answer that. In the meantime, Janet, like from your tell us how you deal with the pre-negotiation nerves, because I know a lot of people, worry about not getting the right thing done. How do you cope with your pre-negotiation nerves, or don't you have any anymore?
Oh, I think you wouldn't be human if you said that you never had any nerves about a negotiation. But I can't overemphasize preparation. And look, I am a mediator, and under preparation is the bane of my life from all participants. But also, if you're going to do a presentation in any way, run it through out loud first. And I confess that I didn't do it for this one, but don't say that, I'll be honest. But in all honesty, don't just read what you're going to say in your head, actually say it out loud. That will take the nerves away, because you'll have done it once, you feel confident, you know where it's going right and where it's going wrong. Can't overemphasize preparation and a rehearsal.
Rehearsal, that's really good. Like, if you can, and maybe rehearse with someone else, let them. One thing that I like, especially when we're going into complex negotiations, I actually get someone I can trust, and I put some of my arguments to them and see what they have to say. Do they think this is a good idea? How do I think I sound? So that's really a good. It's a good tip to do that. Now, we've got a question from Tom. What are your top tips for each employer and employees when entering a negotiation like this? Good question. The first thing I'd always say is you need to understand let's take the employer, you need to understand what the company's policies are, their long-term strategic goals, and where that employee or employees fit within the organization. So what is it about the company? What are these about the employees, and what are you trying to achieve? And look at it strategically within that, and then look to the individual employee as to how you're going to approach the conversation. So as I think I said, I would approach Mary very differently to the way I would approach Janet because of who she is and also the way she performs and what she does. So you look firstly to the broader outlook of what the company is and its policies, and then look to the individual you need to work with in making your plan and making sure that what you're asking for, importantly, fits with not only the strategy but the law. Let's add the law. We need to act lawfully, otherwise they cause problems. Also think about, which I failed to think about, but I must stress the impact of what you decide with that employee on the rest of the organization, because too many times I see that a decision is made for one employee which then impacts the rest of the organization. As far as the employee is concerned, we'll deal, I'm going to put that to Janet because obviously Janet was the employee in this scenario.
And sorry, what are you putting to me? Sorry.
Well, if you were the employee,
Yes.
what are your top tips besides preparation when entering into a negotiation like this? What do you think the employee should know about the employer in preparation?
Well, look, really, as the employee, from the outset, I think you're in the weaker position. So what you have to focus on is what you bring to the company, where your value is, what it would mean if you make them be thinking of what it would mean if you weren't prepared to compromise and left. So you just have to focus on the value that you bring, and particularly from a financial perspective. Because that is, let's face it, the bottom line for every employer. They're there to make money.
Yeah.
So how can you help them?
Yeah, and important to understand the company. So besides making money, like if you're working for Elon Musk versus if you were working for, Atlassian, they're different thought processes, and those
Main
are huge
question
companies.
though,
Yeah.
how are you bringing value? Where's the value? Where's your value to that company? And yes, of
Yeah.
course, that's understanding what the company does and what
Yeah.
they need. And also looking to the future, I suppose. It's not just about today, but how things might develop in the future and how you can be valuable there as well.
Yes, always put yourself in the future as the employee to make yourself the person they need, so they'll give you what you want. That's very important. So, Janet, is there anything else you want to end on and tell people about before we close for today?
I don't think so. I hope we've got our messages across. I think we have. No, there's nothing further from me, Elise. But
Fantastic.
thanks
Thank
to everyone for the great questions and participation.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And everybody, that was really great. Thank you so much for your time. Love the questions and from everyone. And of course, Barry, thanks for your comments. They were very elucidating. So now I just one more part of what we call the bureaucracy of webinars. I need to tell you about our next webinar, and it's going to be scintillating. It really is. We have coming on to our webinar the wonderful Desi Vlahos, who is a lawyer and an educator who specializes in working with organisations to improve their well-being, health and safety outcomes. Now, you might look at me and say, why on earth are you inviting someone who cares about well-being, health and safety outcomes to a webinar that specialises in looking at negotiations and different negotiations? And that's because one of the things I find is the stress that goes behind negotiations, whether those are negotiations around major transactions. When I mean major, I don't mean necessarily huge amounts of money involved, but that impact your life pretty much. Or when there are disputes, there's a huge amount of stress and there's a huge amount of possibilities of people experiencing what we call mental ill health or severe mental issues around that, stress being a huge problem within the corporate world and the legal world. And so Desi and I will be talking about the tips and traps of keeping your mind healthy. I like to say how to keep your mind how to keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. Again, I'm saying my age, but I'm not as old as Rudyard Kipling. But added to that, it's just how do you keep your calm and your cool while there's all this stress happening around you. And Desi's an ace at doing that. I've used her in the past, and I'm so excited that she's agreed to come on our webinar. So on the 31st of July, don't miss it. We'll send out reminders, but we have the gorgeous Desi Vlahos coming on. And that's a wrap, guys. Have a wonderful rest of the day. And I hope where you are, it's warm, even if it happens to be the heater and not the wonderful sun.